So good evening. Welcome to Office Hours. We're very pleased this month to welcome Maud Hickey, and I will let Maud introduce herself and how she got into this whole area of music education and music creativity in particular, and we can go from there.
Yes, I'm retired now, but I began my career as a high school teacher, music teacher, band director, and then studied and got my PhD in music education, and eventually worked at Northwestern University for 22 years doing music education. And the research that I did while working at Northwestern had to do with thinking about and studying and hanging with a whole bunch of kids and looking at their creative thinking through music, through composition and improvisation. And I was interested in all facets of that. And I worked with a lot of kids in a lot of situations, but I was also interested in the power of technology in giving young children, all people, tools to be immediately creative. And I, did some studies with that as well. In the meantime, I don't know how many years ago I had heard of Hyperscore and was thrilled to see it's relaunched. And it's an example of a piece of software that, gives people access to create immediately as composers. It's like finger painting with sound is how I view it. So yeah, that's my background. And like I said, I'm retired now.
Well, we're really glad that we connected with you, and well, the idea of musical, creativity. I'm actually wondering if you did research in this, like how do you measure it? How do you what outcomes do you look for?
Yeah. When I first started, my dissertation advisor was Peter Webster, and he devised a measure of creative thinking in music. And so we actually did a few studies with that, where he was inspired by J.P. Guilford, one of the founders of kind of measurement and creativity. So he had an actual measure, and we messed around with that and did some studies with that. I eventually moved over to thinking that the best way to measure creativity, and I actually did some studies with this as well, is by having people compose and having experts rate whether the compositions are creative or not, period. No categories at all. And that comes from research by Teresa Amabile, and it's called the consensual assessment of creativity. Very simple, and the beauty is in its simplicity. Expert judges rate compositions on creativity, period. Experts know, because creativity is subjective and changes over time and cultures, et cetera, et cetera. So I moved on from more of a objective measure to this consensual assessment, and found it to be very effective, very, very reliable. But that's a great question. How do you measure it?
Well, and also, we all, I think, instinctively, I guess, I suppose, value creativity. But there are also other things that are valuable in musical expression too, right? Just expression itself. It might not be the most creative, original, but if someone harnesses some musical vocabulary to communicate something compelling, that seems like a value as well. I don't know if it's completely orthogonal to creativity, but it seems like it.
No, I think for something to be good, there has to be some craftsmanship as well. And in fact, the Amabile theory was that, creativity had to be both original and crafted. It had to fit into something that we understand. So, anybody can go up to a piano and bang a bunch of notes, and that's creative, but it's not crafted. And so craftsmanship does play a role in that. And she, in her measure of creative thinking, always included not just rate this piece on a scale of 1 to 7 as to its creativity, but also rate this piece on a scale of 1 to 7 as to its craftsmanship. So this ability to express what you want to express is very important. Yeah, that's one facet of her theory. That's important.
And then for teacher, though, there's the other double-edged, because you bring a certain subjectivity. There's judgment being exercised. How do you evaluate the creativity without unfairly imposing your biases, I guess?
And that's $1 million question. As a researcher, it makes sense for me to measure children's creativity by collecting their compositions and testing this theory of amoblies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a teacher, I have completely different feelings about that. Well, one, kind of going along with Amobli's theory, is that teachers know it when they see it. But evaluation and grading, which teachers have to do, I'm really against when it comes to a child's creativity. I think it squelches creativity. So if a teacher is having children compose, I would stay away from rating a child's creativity as a teacher. It is subjective and it's heartfelt. And I'd say absolutely stay away from that. Did they follow directions? If they said it should be 3 minutes long, was it 3 minutes long? Was the child's explanation clear and concise as to why they made the choices they made? So that now we can get more objective. But I would say absolutely, absolutely not should a teacher judge a child's creativity in a grade. In a grade, they can have that conversation with the child and say, is this original? Or does it sound like somebody else? How can you make this more interesting? But so I'm absolutely opposed to evaluating creativity as a teacher in a classroom.
So do you feel that music educators today have the training in the background?
No.
Go in and teach support composition in the classroom.
No. This is my preaching. This is my mission. It's getting a little better. I see a little bit of it more in the schools, and maybe that was because, the 19 or maybe the 2000 version of the national standards included composing. So I think it's getting a little bit better, but yeah, we got a long ways to go, honestly. There's still this stigma, I guess it is a stigma from teachers who go to school. They're trained in the Western European art tradition. They go to school, to college. They audition on their clarinet to be a band player, et cetera, et cetera. They never ever have a composition lesson. Not that that's important. So yeah, composition is just such a mystery, and it's unfortunately still is to teachers. So we have a long ways to go in this country, in my opinion. At Northwestern, we required a class for our undergrads called Teaching Composition and Improvisation in the Schools. So these were teacher gonna-be's. They were music ed majors. And if a student came in to get a master's degree, they had to take that class. So I think that's where the difference can be made, when we're training the teachers who go out to the school and they know what the heck to do. But right now, it's tricky.
Well, I'm just a lot of things I'm thinking. One thing that you said is in this country, and I'm curious if you have any experience or you've looked at the methods of music education in other parts of the world and how that compares.
Mm-hmm. Well, in Europe, we'll just talk about Britain. Actually, in Europe, everybody is it seems people are jealous of our band orchestra choir tradition in our schools, because that's very unusual. And in Britain, especially, a third of the curriculum is creating, a third is producing, and a third is listening. So there's a lot of creative music making in the schools in Britain and in their curriculums. I think of, was he Canadian? John Painter. Uh, there was a British guy who wrote books on creative music making for kids, etc. It was very contemporary, very non notation based, but very innovative. A lot of the curriculum that's come out of the British schools, absolutely. I can't speak to Asian countries, but most of Europe, creativity, composing, improvising for kids is more common than it is here.
Yeah, we'll take a look. You were not familiar with the UK curriculum, so.
Oh yeah, yeah.
By the way, do you have questions for us? Because I think you've been kind of playing around with the new HyperScore, and I hope, were you able to figure out how to get your students' accounts set up within HyperScore?
No, I didn't. I couldn't, but that's okay. I'm learning it. I'm figuring it out. I showed it. I did a workshop at Ripon College. It's a small little college here in Wisconsin for teachers. And I just showed it at the very end. There's a nice, you have great videos on your website, and everybody jaw dropped because it's so unique. Other than, yeah, I'm just playing around, but I see the possibilities, and I haven't had a chance to try it with real children, but so
Well, we're here.
I have no question really. I mean, I have to spend more time with it.
But as you do that, we're just curious to know what you think from your perspective about educating, and like where, you know, you said that this is unique and it presents like the finger painting for music, easy entry to that, but how can we evolve that? What more can be added or shaped to really hit those key points that you feel are lacking in music education?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. I'm going to be working in a school next week, working with fourth graders. I much prefer older kids, but what comes to mind, and I work in schools around here, is that the technology is there. They have these beautiful, and I think it's because of post-COVID, they have these beautiful big whiteboards in their room that are interactive, and you know, teachers and children can go up and touch the whiteboards. And I would love to try something with a whiteboard. And the children all have Chromebooks, of course. Everybody now has mostly Chromebooks. I don't see the iPads. And so I would love to try this in a classroom with a big whiteboard and children's Chromebooks, but I haven't had that opportunity. But the technology is there, is what I'm saying. Technology is absolutely there. Is it built into, or can it be built into, like Schoology or any of the learning platforms?
Yeah, we're part of Music First Classroom.
Oh yes.
Right now,
yeah.
We're looking at the possibility of integrating with other learning management systems and Google Classroom and whatnot, but that's still a work in progress.
Right, that's what I wondered, and but I did look at Music First, so.
So I'm curious, I would love to be a fly on the wall in your classroom when you go in, but how would you approach introducing a group of fourth graders to music composition using HyperScore? What would? Well,
it's funny. Like I said, I'm working next week. I'm subbing for a music teacher, which I love doing. And it's all about solfege, and that's typical in an elementary classroom, and it's conversational solfege. And they've got children learning do, re, mi, sol. And, you know, everything is fixed ahead of time. There's absolutely no room for creativity in this curriculum. It just cracks me up. It'd be so beautiful to incorporate composing while learning solfege, but it's not in there. It's a textbook method. But the way the hyperscore melody thing, I don't remember what you call it.
The
It's set up.
melody window, yeah.
Melody window is a
Mhm.
perfect opportunity for children to apply what they're learning about do, mi, so,
Mhm.
do, re, mi, just clicking on that and then using that in a composition.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it's a mindset of teachers that there's this fixed curriculum and we get to get children from point A to point B so they can read with not even imagining the potential for creating in
Yeah.
this classroom.
It would be interesting to if we could set up a study and see if the competencies that are in the curriculum could be more readily achieved
Mhm.
by adding creativity or freedom earlier on versus traditional methods, or current methods, I should say.
Right. That would be a beautiful study just to see how far, I think teachers are worried about not keeping pace, so they got to do the next lesson. But my gut is if children could compose with what they're learning, they would be farther ahead than say a pilot group that's just keeping pace with the reading lesson. Yeah, that would be fun. I think you should go for it.
We're open to, we'd love to.
Well, and the other thing that I think we try to teach note reading just way
Mhm.
too early. Like, why? It's not attached to anything else. It's not attached to playing an instrument. It's not
Right.
attached to anything except the sake of note reading. And, that can be put off. You can start note reading in 5th or 6th grade, where I think they would pick it up just as quickly, if not quicker. But in the meantime, if they're playing with the sound and
Really training their ear to hear.
connecting their ear to
Mhm.
what they see on the screen, because they touch the hyperscore melody bit, and now their ear and their eyes are connected. Yeah.
Yeah. As we're talking about it, I start thinking about the analogy to like math education, where so many people go through the mechanics of learning arithmetic or certain concepts without understanding kind of the applications or really the underlying, like, why this
Yeah.
is the way it is. And in music, like if you're learning notation, and notation being very symbolic and doesn't really reflect the concepts of duration in a logical, explicit way, or pitch more so. But is it clear if you have like this musical intuition cultivated first, and then like you can map
Right.
abstract concepts onto that?
Right. And like language,
Mhm.
we don't, kids learn to speak by speaking and listening to speaking
Yeah.
language. We don't label the dangling participle for them, thank God, until they're in school. But in this country, I think we're more about labeling things and teaching notation and reading way too soon, and it's so often not connected to sound.
Right.
It's just theory not connected to sound. So if I were queen. Yeah.
Oh,
Are you doing research with your software?
we would love to. We don't really have the I guess the capacity to at the moment. Well, I would say we would love to partner with people who are doing research. I mean, we're not academics. We don't have, access to a laboratory of,
Yeah.
classroom. And we would defer to the experts in terms of how to kind of set up a proper study, but we would be happy to support that in any way. And particularly, it needs to be rigorous. We'd like to,
Yeah.
we know that to change practice sometimes, that key publication can
Yeah.
help and
Yeah.
help validate what
Yeah.
we believe. So
Yeah, it's a
Hyperscore has been a part of a few
oh.
small research projects over the years,
Uh-huh.
but nothing so much like in the scope that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe it's time. Well, we'd
Mhm.
love to think about that if that's something
You
that
know,
would.
if I was still working in a, you know, a research institution like Northwestern, I would jump on that. But so the key is to find, you know, and I'm going through my brain of my colleagues out there, people who are in institutions who can do research, um, to find someone like that.
Yeah, that would be good. Even just what you mentioned before, like to take two different approaches and
Yeah. Yeah.
classrooms and see,
Mhm.
what their competencies are at the end of that
Mhm.
semester.
Their year. Yeah.
Or, yeah. So something else I've been wondering about is that we have all kinds of different creative arts, and in schools, I think kids have access to writing, creative writing, visual arts, sculpture, et cetera, media arts, and so on. But I've sort of hypothesized that um, maybe not for every kid, but certainly for some kids, the fact that music is abstract, it's essentially non-representational. I mean, you can mimic
Mhm.
sounds and so on,
Mhm.
but that may be really liberating for kids in terms of expression. Like they're not like if you are given an assignment to draw an apple or draw
Mhm.
whatever it is, like something people are like, wow, that doesn't look like
Right. Right. Yeah.
the wrong color, that's the grammar there, the spelling, whatever it is. But music is it's a
Yeah.
little more nebulous. You
Mhm.
can be a little more free from that kind of um judgment, I guess. And I'm wondering if there's any evidence at all that music
Mm.
kind of helps people tap and express thoughts and emotions in a more, you know, untrammeled way.
Yeah.
Or
I'm sure there is. I'm not familiar with that. And my guess is there's more of that with adults than children. And there should be more like that with children, I think. Um, it's a tough one to study though, isn't it? It's how do you measure that? How do you, yeah, yeah, I guess that's my response. I worked with adolescents in a prison setting, in a carceral setting in Chicago doing composition because related to what you just said, June, I see the power of it for kids way beyond um, I don't know, getting smarter or learning music just to learn how to read music so they can play an instrument someday. So I just see the power of it for kids when giving freedom to express. And so I used GarageBand in that setting. And what those kids did they didn't have any school music experience, but what they could create was phenomenal. And I sense that it had a positive impact on them. I mean, I did a qualitative study. I collected some qualitative data. Um, and yeah, it had a very positive impact on them. How could it not? So yes, you're onto something there, but there's not much. It's just so hard to measure. Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
curious, in your experience with that in that setting, did you find that the participants were hesitant or reserved at first about being expressive, or they were eager to express themselves?
Extremely eager.
Mm.
Extremely eager. Yep. Yep.
So sometimes I feel like I've encountered, especially when dealing with older
Mm.
kids, like mid-teens, let's say, they say, oh, they're hesitant to think they can compose because they've never had the opportunity before. So they think that, oh, that's something, not something I can do. And
Yeah.
that becomes part of their thinking, and that we have to give them opportunities to break out of that or to realize that they can be musically expressive.
Yeah.
If
I'm
they,
not even sure we use the word compose.
Mhm.
and we taught skills along the way, and we gave little mini kind of do this, and before they knew it, they were creating stuff. Yeah. 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 The presentation is important. Who you're dealing with is important. All of that. Yeah. And GarageBand was fantastic for that project.
Yeah. That's an interesting project. Is there still any kind of ongoing relationship between?
Yes. There's still, I'm going to send you a link to the study. This was through Northwestern, and it was with the juvenile detention center in Chicago, and they're still limping along trying to keep this going. But all the red tape of getting in and out of the institution and etc. was kind of crazy, but they're still trying to do it. And then COVID hit, and then that got crazy. That was very rewarding experience for me.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to find a link to that study.
Have you done anything kind of in the music therapy kind of setting?
No, but I started to read that literature, and boy, oh boy, they're doing a lot more than music educators. And they have been doing improvisation and composition with children in therapy settings for years. And there's a whole set of research literature out there on that. How are things going as far as teachers getting into this, or
It's steady, slow. It's really individuals kind of finding it and kind of going through the whole process to be able to I mean, they have to go through their school and get their administration to approve it and all that. So it takes time. And I think I think it's just challenging for teachers to contemplate any kind of modification to to their existing
yeah, it is.
approaches and curriculum. So to kind of break through that is that's our challenge. So what we're doing right now this fall is this we started this hyperscore challenge.
I saw
So
that.
we thought
That's so
of
cool.
doing it as a curricular.
Huh?
We have 38 people have signed up so far. 38. I hope they're teachers or educators, or we don't yet know if they're just individuals signing up or if we certainly know there's some educators who are planning to sign up a classroom full of kids to participate. So we'll see how that goes. And, we're going to release different prompts every week. So we started with a tranche of 3 like silent movie clips. They're edited to be short enough. We're not asking anyone to compose an hour long silent movie score. That would be a little.
It's a great idea as a prompt.
Yeah. And I think next week we're going to do a couple of video games that have like different moods and actions. There's actually a lot of material online video prompts, art films, dance, kind of abstract, computer generated material. So we're having fun with it. We probably don't want to go too overboard, but then we'll start to think about, if work starts to come in, do we share at some point interim along the way to keep people excited and encouraged and heard and seen as they're working on these things. And then we've been hoping to kind of really engage the Make Music, International Make Music Day kind of network of performing musicians, and hopefully a few of them will kind of be interested in arranging and performing some of these compositions in their communities.
Yeah.
But if they
I
even if
I mean, I think
Go
these
ahead.
are really, really creative ideas. I think they're great ideas, actually. The hyperscore challenge, all of that is really fun.
Thank
It's
you.
just penetrating and getting teachers to try it and jump on board,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a part of their curriculum. They can choose to be, but also thinking of it kind of in the frame of it could be an after-school activity. So
Yeah. Mhm.
educators, they get acquainted with it and then
Yeah.
maybe see how it can then, after experience with it, fit it into their curriculum.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. And let's stay in touch.
indeed. Let's for sure. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.